directly to Donald Trump, saying while Russia has every right to respond, he's going to wait to work to restore Russia-U.S. relations based on Trump's policies, not Obama's. Trump's response on Twitter, great move on delay by V. Putin. I always knew he was very smart. We are joined now by Sean Spicer, the incoming White House Communications Director and Press Secretary, in his first Sunday show interview since being tapped for the jobs by President-elect Donald Trump. Sean, congratulations and thank you for being here.
You bet. Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So let's start right with the big news this week from President Obama, imposing those sanctions on Russia, expelling those diplomats. Does President-elect Trump agree with those moves, or will he reverse them once he takes office?
As he said the other day, he's going to sit down with the Intelligence Committee heads next week, get a full briefing on the situation. I think one of the questions that we have is why the magnitude of this. I mean, when you look at 35 people being expelled, 2 sites being closed down, the question is that response in proportion to the actions taken? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But you have to think about that. That's nothing that we haven't seen in modern history. And when we look back,
well, we've seen diplomats.
No, but hold on. Let's look at this. Yeah. In 2015, China took over 1 million records, sensitive data, people like me who had worked in the government at any time, classified our personal information, where we lived, things that we had written down on our applications or on our security clearances, and not a White House statement wasn't even issued. No action publicly was taken. Nothing. Nothing was taken when millions of people had their private information, including information on security clearances, that was shared. Not one thing happened. So there is a question about whether there's a political retribution here, whether it's versus a diplomatic response.
So it sounds like you think these measures may be too much?
Well, no. What I think is
that them is on the table.
The president-elect needs to sit down with the heads of the intelligence communities next week and get a full briefing on what they knew, why they knew it, and whether or not the Obama administration's response was in proportion to the actions taken. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We need to have that briefing first. But I would argue that if you look at our history, you haven't seen a response like that in modern history for any action. Well, and when you look at the fact that China did something so egregious in 2015 and the White House did nothing publicly, not even issue a statement, except they sent everyone who had worked in the government a letter saying you get free monitoring of your credit. Right. That's all they did. They took action by sending a letter to us, not even taking an action against China. So what Russia did, we have to wait and see, but it'd be interesting.
It's interesting, though, because we see near universal support for these moves from Republicans in Congress. In fact, Mitch McConnell called them a good first step and suggested that Republicans in the Senate may actually move to impose stiffer sanctions as punishment for Russia. Does President-elect Trump oppose those efforts? I
think what he's going to do, as I said, is sit down with the heads of the intelligence committees, get a full briefing on what they knew, whether or not and then he can determine whether or not the actions were taken. But as you saw, President Putin said he's not going to retaliate in the way he initially suggested. He wants to wait for President Trump to come in. I think that shows you the power that President Trump has. He's already had unbelievable success domestically with bringing back jobs and Carrier and Sprint. No, hold on. And I think that around the world, foreign leaders are seeing what we're seeing here in this country, which is that business as usual is over. President Trump is not only going to put the American worker first, but he's going to restore America's place in the globe.
But what's the bottom line? Just a yes or no answer. Does President-elect Trump now accept the fact that Russia was behind the DNC hack?
Well, I think that there's a report that came out the other day that got issued on the 29th that the intelligence committees put out. And while the media played it up as this report about the hacking, what it actually is, if you look through it and it's available online, is a series of recommendations that should be taken, like changing passwords, changing administrative rights. What it shows is that by all measures, the Democratic National Committee had a very lax IT support. Now, hacking is wrong by any standards. No one supports anyone hacking into any other entity, legal, domestic, or foreign, or anyone interfering in anything. But the fact of the matter is, what this report really does show is that there's a need for them to go back in and look at what they're doing IT-wise to protect their system.
Absolutely. But you do see, I have the report too, you do see the headline, Russian malicious cyber activity. It makes it clear and it names Russia, gives the IP addresses.
Right, and then it says actions take, back up the system.
Right.
Staff training.
Absolutely.
Mitigating patch applications. Apple,
But does he accept that Russia was behind this now?
Well, I think, like I said, he has to have the briefing from the intelligence community.
So he's
next
still not
week.
there yet.
It's not a question of not there yet, Jonathan. It's a question of getting the information. Everyone in the media wants to jump forward and make a conclusion based off other sourced information, anonymous sources that are coming out of the intelligence community. He's going to do this right.
Well, this is no longer anonymous. This is a public statement.
What this says is that the DNC had a problem with their IT security and people tried to hack it, and they need to do a better job of protecting it. But the fact of the matter is, we're having part of a conversation. Why aren't we talking about the influence, other influences on the election? Why aren't we talking about Hillary Clinton get debate questions ahead of time? That's a pretty valid attempt to influence an election. Somebody giving her to the debate questions and the answers of an election. No, it's not. Hey, no one's asking those questions. And the fact is that everyone wants to make Donald Trump admit to certain things. When are we going to start talking about the other side of this? Which is, what did Hillary Clinton do to influence the election? Is she being punished in any way? What are we doing to make sure that people don't get the debate questions ahead of time? Because I can tell you this, if my boss at the time, Reince Priebus, had gotten the debate questions and handed them off, he would have been driven out of this town on a stake, and Donald Trump would have been vilified. No one wants to ask those questions now.
Just to be clear, that was during the Democratic primary. It was not in the debates with Donald Trump. But let me move on.
So it makes it better?
No, I'm just want to be clear what we're talking about. You're going back to the primary.
I'm sorry that I'm going back, because that's who ultimately ended up the Democratic nominee. Well, so you can't sort of say, let's go back only part way. The fact of the matter is, Bernie Sanders gave her a heck of a run. If he had actually not had the same information, maybe he could have done, maybe not. But you can't have as part of a conversation. I think we have to look at this holistically.
Okay. So I want to ask you something. Donald Trump has had a lot to say about Russia over the past couple of weeks, in particular about Vladimir Putin. First, he praised Putin for sending him a, quote, very nice letter saying he thought Putin's thoughts were, quote, so correct. Then he agreed with Putin's mocking of Hillary Clinton, saying it was so true. And now we saw most recently praising Putin's muted response to these new sanctions, saying, I always knew he was very smart. Sean, you're a long-time Republican, party of Reagan. Is there something a little strange to you to hear the incoming president offering so many words of praise?
Well, let's look at what happened. Right? The United States says that we're going to impose these sanctions, expel people, close down sites, etc., call out people by name. The Russian government says we're going to retaliate in the equal sense. And then Vladimir Putin says, you know what, I'm actually going to wait until Donald Trump goes. That's actually good for our country. So the idea is, everyone wants to talk about the tweets he sends, but I'd actually focus on the action that he's getting. Donald Trump's not president yet, and he's getting actions, successes, and wins, both abroad and here at home. Look, everything that he does right now, he speaks with the head of Sprint, gets 5,000 jobs moved from abroad, and everyone starts to mock him. Oh, those jobs were already announced. They weren't. The sales jobs had been previously announced. These jobs are coming from abroad to America. And instead of trying to mock him or undermine him, it's time that people started giving him credit for actually getting things done.
So a broader question about Russian-U.S. relations. Paul Ryan, in his statement in response to these sanctions, said Russia does not share America's interest. In fact, it has consistently sought to undermine them. John McCain, in response, said Putin is a thug and a murderer. Is there just a fundamental different worldview on Russia between these Republican leaders and Donald Trump?
It's not. It's an understanding of the role that Russia plays in our world right now. They have the most number of nuclear weapons in the world. You can sit back and say, we're not going to have a relationship. They had a failed Russian reset the last 8 years. They wanted to have a relationship with Russia, and they failed. This president's going to have a relationship with Russia and understand that it's in America's interest to have a relationship with Russia where they don't pose a threat to our national economic interests. That benefits every American. And I don't know why we wouldn't support that. At the end of the day,
I'm just asking if he views this differently than Republican leaders.
What he's viewing this as is a world leader who understands that the United States has two major other growing superpowers, China and Russia. And right now, to have a relationship with Russia, which we don't have, because this administration had a failed reset that didn't go anywhere. And so right now, they want to praise the fact that they don't have a relationship. Donald Trump recognizes that a good leader is going to protect America's interests by making sure that we have a relationship with Russia, that our interests are protected, not theirs.
Okay, I want to move on to the inauguration coming up. You've promised, and we've heard from Trump talking about a big start to this administration.
Right.
What is the one big thing we are going to see after he takes the oath of office?
It's going to be not one big thing. It's going to be many big things. On day one, he's going to sign a series of executive orders to do two things. One is repeal a lot of the regulations and actions that have been taken by this administration over the last 8 years that have hampered both economic growth and job creation. And then secondly, do the same on a forward-thinking thing. He's going to start implementing things. He's going to bring a new brand to Washington. He's going to institute a lobbying ban. 5 years, it's very forward-thinking. What have we had in the past is people who've looked in the rearview mirror. This time we're thinking forward. If you want to serve in a Trump administration, you're going to serve this country, not yourself. And so there's going to be a 5-year ban on people going off to be lobbyists or a lifetime ban on anyone who wants to serve a foreign government.
So you're the incoming press secretary and communications director. I've got to ask you about what we saw in the New York Times last week. Headline about Trump talking about expanding U.S. nuclear ability. But what struck me was the subhead, statement on Twitter. In the beginning of the second paragraph, Mr. Trump's statement in a mid-afternoon Twitter post. Here, big front page headlines generated by a mid-afternoon Twitter post. Is that what we're going to see? I mean, you're the press secretary.
Sure.
What are you going to be doing?
Why not?
So major policy
but I think that
done via Twitter?
With all due respect, I think it freaks the mainstream media out that he has this following of over 45+ million people that follow him on social media that he can have a direct conversation.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to have it funneled through the media. This is going to be a business as usual is over, as I've said before. There's a new sheriff in town. He's going to do things first and foremost for the American people.
So we're still going to see a lot of Twitter.
You're going to see, absolutely, you're going to see Twitter.
He had said on 60 Minutes that he was going to cut back.
You know what? The fact of the matter is that when he tweets, he gets results. So whether it's Twitter, holding a news conference, picking up the phone, having a meeting, he is going to make sure that he continues to fight for the American people every single day.
A bottom line, are you going to have regular White House press briefings?
Absolutely. Some way. Some of them will be on camera, some of them will be off, but absolutely, we understand the importance of
no more daily televised press briefings?
No decisions have been made, but we're looking at every single facet of government and figuring out, can we do better? We'll sit down with the White House Correspondents' Center, Correspondents Association. I've already had reporters reach out and say, hey, we've got some ideas. This is about, we understand that we have a message to get out and successes that we want the American people to understand. So we'll use every tool possible. And absolutely, we'll sit down and make sure that on a daily basis, the press is informed.
And regular presidential press conference.
Absolutely.
All right, Sean Spicer, incoming press secretary.